Most of us think of money as a source of income only, while others see it differently.
Some people that start businesses and do very, very well. Then you have a second generation that comes, mismanages it, not great. And then you have the third generation comes and it's all gone.
At the age of 17, his country got invaded and he served alongside the armed forces in Kuwait.
The invasion happened while I was in Spain. By the second day, we realized Kuwait was fully occupied. I had very little money, less than $500 only. That time I volunteered to the army, Kuwait Army in the beginning.
And later he went on to build major financial institutions, banks, and Islamic investment organizations underwriting billions of dollars across multiple continents.
I just graduated, I just made, $1 million from trading equities, but then it was all gone, very quickly. So it was a lesson learned. It's not about money. And happiness does not come from money. Money creates more problems. The community here that want to buy a home in a way that does not affect their faith. So there weren't a lot of solutions for that market. 60 to 70% of our clients are not even Muslim.
In this episode, I will unpack how someone like him thinks about risk, strategy, the future of halal economy, and how he sees money. Mr. Fahed Boodai, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for making the time for us and our viewers and listeners.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is such an honor to be here with you. I'm humbled that you wanted to do this podcast with me, and I'm much more aware of what you've done and all the impact that you've created, and I would be honored to be part of that impact, inshallah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we're going to be learning so much about, I suppose, wealth creation in general as an overarching theme. But I want to begin, if you can kindly take us up to the Desert Storm War in 1990. Like, you were 17 at that time and you served in the armed forces alongside the US forces. What was life like before and how did it develop?
So I think that's a great question to start. My upbringing with my family is a little bit out of the norm of Kuwait. My father studied in the United States in the 70s. So I grew up early on during the elementary school in the United States. I came back to Kuwait while I was about in fifth grade, which is a time where the way I was thinking was very American. So my father wanted to make sure that I got the Kuwaiti culture and a little bit getting entrenched in the society. So that summer I had to do 4 or 5 years catch up of Arabic. So I can go into an Arabic class in the American school and not having Arabic as my second language. So that was part one, having a little bit of a global background in the upbringing. And my family's history in business and in culture also stems earlier. My great-grandfather had businesses as a merchant family in India at that time. And we were, as a family, doing exports and imports between the Gulf. So we had a little bit of an Indian culture based on that experience. And it allowed us to even speak. I speak Hindi.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but I don't read or write it. And I learned it from the upbringing. So I would say that was an important foundation that built upon, getting to that age of 17, and then the first Gulf War that happened. What happened was I was on a summer vacation, my first summer vacation with my friends. It was going to be my senior year in high school. The invasion happened while I was in Spain, and we had 4 days left before to going to Kuwait. And that day, when the invasion happened, we said, first of all, we were worried about our families. We were trying to get on phone calls and we could barely make calls and understand what was going on. By the second day, we realized, Kuwait was fully occupied. No communication between Kuwait and us. So I didn't know where to go. I had very little money, less than $500 only. And then, with my friends, instead of us staying in 4 rooms, we all stayed in 1 bedroom. We managed our expenses for the first week. We didn't know what was going on. And then each of my friends found a family member somewhere, and then they went and Thankfully, I had a uncle who was also in Spain and was a chairman of a bank in Bahrain. So I went with him and I went to Bahrain. During my time in Bahrain, my family was still in Kuwait, my mother and my father and my siblings. So at that time, I volunteered to the army, Kuwait Army in the beginning. We spent about 6 weeks training in Bahrain. The last week of training, the U.S. troops needed translators. And they came and they asked who spoke English, and I was one of the people that was chosen. And I had one issue, and they said, "You're a little bit too young." But 18 is the minimum age. And I said, "Yeah, I'll be 18 in 3 months, or let me give you one of my uncles to, confirm that it's okay." So they got approval from my uncle as my guardian. So I joined the U.S. Military Intelligence Unit with the 82nd Airborne, and we were in Rafah, Saudi Arabia, gathering mostly intelligence information about where the troops were, and until Kuwait got liberated. And then I returned to Kuwait. They liked me so much, they asked me to join Host Nation Affairs, the U.S. Army, which was another military. Now they started to pay me. It wasn't a volunteer. They paid me for about 6 months until I went back to my senior year in high school. And I finished that and came back to the United States to finish my college studies.
Wow. Did at any point did you want to pursue the military aspect, like Air Force or something like this?
That's another great question. My dream was to really be an Air Force pilot. I was very much affected by Top Gun 1 and the movie. And, also during the war, we would see all the planes going, and that was something very important for me. And I loved that. And I wanted to join the military. But it was my father, actually, who was a pilot early on in his career before I was born, but stopped because he had some ear issues. And he told me, "Well, great, but I would highly recommend a college education. And I don't think, the route you're choosing of going into the military is the right one." We had a little bit of a debate, but then I agreed. And I went to the States to pursue my college degree.
Wow, wow, wow. So did he convince you, or did he kind of say, "Listen, just don't do it"?
No. Yeah, I mean, he did a little bit convincing, because I think he said you have the background, you have the linguistic ability to really bring value to Kuwait. Go and study at the best schools in the United States. What happened actually is the year after that, unfortunately, he passed away at a young age. And then I decided, I was going to go to the military. But then my grandmother, my grandmother, who was his mother, and my mother said, "Your father always wanted you to get an education." And that was really one of my biggest turning points. I went back the third day after the Azah. We did Hajj. There was a Hajj. We did the Hajj. And then I came back and I said, "I want to go back to the States." And I finished up my semester. And that was really a big trigger, because now I was the eldest in my family. My mother was young and I had younger siblings. My father passed away. A sense of responsibility came in very early at that age, of 19 years old in the U.S. And really making the final decision, this is my career path. I'm going to focus on finance, and completed my studies, and then got a master's degree also in finance in the U.S.
Is that in LA or San Diego? Which one came first?
Yeah, you're right. So I went to the University of San Diego for undergrad, graduated in 1996. And then I went back to Kuwait. I started at a company called the Securities House. And I got married. Both myself and my wife applied for grad school in the U.S. and we got accepted. She got accepted at USC, which was in Los Angeles. And I got accepted at Loyola Marymount, also in Los Angeles. So we both went to school and did our graduate studies in Los Angeles. At that time, I also started working. during my grad studies, because the company that sponsored me in Kuwait wanted to invest globally. And that was the first opportunity for me to explore the aspects of global investments. In San Francisco, where I was working, I was commuting between LA and San Francisco. And in 1998, there wasn't a lot of Sharia-compliant type of funds or products out there. So one of my first tasks was doing a screening. So I'd ask the scholars back home, what would it take for us to buy public equities in the United States? So they would prohibit these industries. You cannot invest in weapons, the regular Sharia issues, more of an ethical perspective, I think. Prohibitive business would be usury, interest, riba, insurance, or companies, for example, that made more than 10% of their income from interest. That's not Sharia compliant. Or that had debt more than 33% of their total asset side. That wasn't compliant. So we would screen the global stock market, specifically in the US markets. And we would partner up with the right investor managers. And that's, I think, one of the most important areas that I would like to focus on, and is really the partnerships that we created. The partnerships that I created back in 1998 are still with me as partners or as people that I've done business with and continue to do business with, whether it was in the global equity markets, but it also transferred to real estate and other alternative investments. And it's all based on the networking and the relationships that were built early on.
Amazing. So during this war phase, I think 6 months or so, it lasted?
Yeah, a little bit more. Maybe it was 7 months. And then after, when Kuwait was liberated, there was a lot to be done. So I spent about a year in military.
Okay. And what did that teach you about pressure, decision-making, working under pressure, where it's not just, we think we know the realities of war,
True.
But we actually don't know, what it feels like to almost live under a circumstance where a bomb might drop on you. So what was it like?
From my point of view, it was my country that was gone. So everything, my family was there, to make a decision that I'm all for this. I didn't have even a shadow of doubt. There was no even concern. We did have Scuds fly over us. We didn't even have masks at that time. We were putting khitras, at a certain time before we got our equipment and all that kind of stuff. I had no fear whatsoever during that time, and it was very enlightening, especially working with intelligence, understanding a story, because it all comes back to the story. So we would meet people outside of the camp, and we would drive for 2, 3, 4 hours, and we would meet Bedouins in the desert and ask and understand, and then what's happening on that side, because all of these Bedouins had cattle camels and sheep that would go across the borders. So you'd get some intelligence from there. And so it tells me something, that everything, even in the case of war, it's all about the story. So we would capture the story, put it in a way where the military experts would decide on a strategic move from that story.
And the fact that you were looking for information intelligence, did that play a part, or does it still play a part in terms of how you kind of gather facts and information, even maybe in making investment decisions? Because ultimately you are looking for information or risks.
At that time, I didn't realize, how much of expertise or experience I was gaining. But for example, when we were interviewing prisoners of war, right? And this was right during the liberation. There was a lot of prisoners of war. I understood the fact that, some of them they didn't know what was going on. They were so poor, they were so hungry, they just put them in buses and came, and another. So their story, from my point of view, was one that they weren't aware of the magnitude of what, they were put in. On the other hand, when you interviewed the real red Red Guard military of the Iraqi troops, they were very, you know, strong-willed. Even when you questioned them, they were very high. They were telling me, "Oh, you, what are you doing? You're against Islam and all those kind of things." You know, they would use things just to help me up. It taught me, you know, another story, which is you have to control your emotions. One, two, passion. It tells you, you know, everybody has some kind of passion and driver behind them. So these Red Guard army were passionate about their position, right? And they were defending it even when they were caught. So yeah, of course, you learn from all these different interviews.
Wow. So, I mean, I want to move slightly forward. So now let's talk a little bit about money.
Yeah.
Like money, I don't know what to make of money. We all look at it from a different angle. And I think majority of the world, they see as a source of income. It's something that you earn and you live your life with. How do you see money? Do you see it the same way, or is that more of a tool, fuel, leverage? What is it?
Well, the most important thing, I think, for everybody that considers, you know, what money means, you know, some, of course, it's a form of livelihood, the most basic livelihood. You need to get a shelter, you need to have food on the table, and from that perspective, and that's the way I would say the majority of the people in the world feel. You know, it's, you know, how do I meet my expenses? On the other side, when it's wealth creation or wealth preservation is also another important thing. So there's a lot of studies that tell and show some important statistics. Some people that start businesses and do very, very well, then you have a second generation that comes, manages it, mismanages it, not great. And then you have the third generation comes and it's all gone.
Yeah.
Right? And then they have to start again. And this story I've seen so many times all over, especially in our region, where it was family businesses that then had issues at different levels. So I think it's really the way you look at it. You know, there's a big difference between wealth preservation and, for example, you're taking more risk to you know, start a new business, an idea that you're going to put money to. If it works, if it doesn't work, you could lose it all. So I think money has a different definition depending on who you're talking to and who and what the purpose of that is.
So let's say I've always been an operator, like, you know, in the trenches, doing things, getting it done. But post 40, I was thinking about, you know, how do I move away from this operator mode to more of a allocator mode and what you just said, preservation mode, and, you know, think more properly about every decision, risk analysis. Before I was quite reckless, you know, I was trying things, and if it didn't work, okay, let's move on. But let's say I want to become more like you. Like, what mindset shift do I need to have?
See, that's part of the journey. That what you just explained and how your mind started, that comes with experience because you've learned of mistakes, and then you want to, you know, be from an operational side of things. And everybody goes through that, whether, you know, especially entrepreneurs. Okay, failure is something that is normal. Okay, but you can embrace failure by learning from it and doing something with it, or doing something else that you overcome the obstacles that you had the first time, right? So I think it's part of the journey for you to go into spaces and understand risk and understand what I want to preserve and what I want to, and then that's where diversification comes in, and that's where global diversification comes in. So from my point of view, I had the same journey. Not everything was easy. A perfect example of this was early in my career, during the time where we were doing global equities and the Sharia-compliant. It was during the internet boom of 1998 and 1999, and I was living it in San Francisco. And I was investing, and I made a lot of money very quickly, but I didn't understand the impact of what I was doing, because everything was great. Everything was great. And then they said Y2K is going to come, the markets are going to fall. Nothing happened in Y2K. Everything was fine. A little bit later, 9 months later, then we had the internet bust. And I lost all my money very quickly, all of it, because I was invested in 4 or 5 different companies that were going high and everything. So that was my first big lesson. And during that time, I did have an inclination of, oh, let me take some money out while I was married with my wife. And I said, how about we buy this, instead of renting an apartment, how about we buy this home? And I wish I did, and I didn't at that time. And it was like $300,000, $400,000. Okay. And I said, I could have probably at that time, I said, you know what, let me wait another couple of months. I'll make this money. These are the tricks that I fell on, and that's what I learned. So lesson number 1 is the mistakes that you make. But thankfully that was personal money. I wasn't managing other people's money. But I understood, what risk was, and not everything goes up all the way, and the story of Bitcoin is similar, for example, of how quickly it went up. And if somebody takes a lot of debt or takes credit on that, they could be in trouble if there's a decline. So,
and does Islam have a view on something like Bitcoin, like where it's quite volatile?
Islam, I think, or Sharia-compliant basis you really need to understand what you are doing. I think that's the most critical component of anything. In investment, it's about having as much information and due diligence as you can. Do the research, understand the demographic, understand the asset class that you're being, but most importantly, understand the risks that are involved and how to get away from these risks. I think from that context also, don't be, I would say, don't be conscious of the fact that everything is going to be simple. No, you need to be conscious about macro things. For example, small things. Having the right lawyers that represent you is so important. And that's something that I credit my career to, is having, great counsel, lawyers on our side. I used 2 law firms all through my 30-year career, two principals in these law firms that have become my friends, that I trust, with all, in terms of their, the way they think, or in terms of their ability to protect our investments, or the ability to even govern the process. These are all important things that I think everybody should be considerate of, hiring the right people, hiring the right consultants. Don't be cheap and not spending the,
that is something that I had to kind of personally had to get over the line of, like, where it was initially more about what am I giving someone, and then it's switched to, okay, if I give X, then what am I going to get in return? And most of the time, I think you're just like, that saying, 3 feet from gold. And with hiring as well, like, we just short sell ourselves, like just few thousand, and then beyond that, there's a different caliber of people waiting.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard to cross that threshold.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important ways of finding teams or recruitment is, I always ask this question, tell me the problems that you've been through. Don't tell me all the successes. Tell me the time that you were at this crisis, for example, in the 2008 crisis. I would ask, where were you? What were you doing? What issues have you faced? Because I think you always want to have the resources that have the expertise and the experience that have been through the bad times and not just the good times. I think the person that has tried different things and failed and learned and failed, they're much more valuable to the team than the people that were just doing, oh, I did this success, I'm untouchable. That's how I felt the first time I did because I'm serious. I mean, I said, this is it. I just graduated. I just made, $1 million from trading equities, but then it was all gone, very quickly. So it was a lesson learned. And I think these are all, points in your career or your life and the journey where you learn And once you learn, that's it. It's that light that goes on. You'll never make that mistake again.
What was that like for you? Like, is there a certain principles that you would never kind of like discard, no matter how good the deal is? Like, you know what, this is against my personal discipline, and you know what?
The most important thing of any investment is the philosophy and mission and strategy, and seeing it and believing it and having the passion of what you're selling or what you're trying to create. And I think if you get through that first phase, then you hire the right team around you, not just people that work for you, but also the service provider, whether it's the best tax lawyers, the best accountants, the best. Don't save a little bit of money by going to a tier 2 or a tier 3. That's one of the principles that I would did it, is always have the best renowned advice and counsel with you all the time.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think Steve Jobs, he's again Jack Ma, Alibaba, Elon Musk, all the, I guess, visibly most successful businessmen of our time.
Yeah.
They say the same thing: hire the best people and make sure that they work together. That's your job. So, and I think sometimes I feel like I've learned that a bit too late, but then again, I think I have some time. So when do you say no? Like, how do you say no? What is your strategy of saying no?
So every investment, I mean, whether it started from global equities and then it went into real estate, and then it really depends on, as I said, the strategy or the philosophy behind the investment. There are things, for example, that are hints during that phase that give you, oh, I'm a little bit concerned about this. Some of them could be the quality of the partners that you're going to be working with. And I've had that experience where we were working with a advisor or a partner in the team that after a couple of years went and didn't do their work, and we eliminated their contract. And that was when we had to say no, because they were mismanaging, and so there are opportunities that will come, and during a certain phase that you make a decision, you say, no, this is not the right team, this is not the right advisor with me, thank you very much, we have a letter agreement, we're going to cancel or stop the relationship with you. So you could say no during that phase, and that was something that happened. You could also say no very early on in the due diligence process, because one of the things that I make sure I understand is what's my exit strategy. And when the exit strategy, you have to look at opportunities that have a deep market, right? There are, for example, great ideas or great investment opportunities in Kuwait, for example, where I come from, but the market is very small. So, if I'm going to buy, let's assume $100 million building in Kuwait, there's going to probably be 2 or 3 buyers out there, maybe. But if I'm doing that in the United States or in the UK, there's thousands of buyers. So there's a much deeper market, right? So you look at, the exit scenario and the depth of the market in terms of getting, the risk profile down, 1. 2, we're in the business of investment management and asset management. Investors need a track record. They need to realize their investment. So I think these are areas, or these are times where we said no, based on it being not a deep market, based on things we learned in due diligence. But the philosophical phase is built from a strategy that the board puts together, the investment committee puts together, the board strategy team puts together. And it's not just within the bank, for example, but it's even within the different entities that manage within the group, that there is governance and there is a strategy, and you also have to be very mindful of where you are in the cycle, because things that worked in 2004 does not mean they're going to work in 2006. And that's
Unlearn, relearn, unlearn, relearn.
yeah, because it's really timing. And I think timing is so important. And I think one of the successes that we've had as a group is timing. And some things that you did in 2002 were great, but you can't do them again in 2006. So you have to adapt, and you have to change, and you have to find the next interesting idea. So, in real estate, we started with single tenant buildings, leased to government tenants or leased to a university. And then we went at a different time based on what happened with the financial crisis. These type of assets became a little bit more risky. So then you start looking at, okay, what else? What would I do? So in 2008, 2009, we focused on, after that, after the Lehman crisis, we focused on student housing, for example, or we focused on, this is the key word, assets that were mission critical. For example, the headquarters of Procter & Gamble in the United Kingdom during the worst financial crisis of 2009, we bought it. We bought it at a time because we understood two facts. One, Procter & Gamble is going to be in business regardless of what happens. This is what they do. This is what they sell. 5 billion people a day use a Procter & Gamble product. Are they going to default on their asset? No. So, okay. How much return are we going to get? How much yield? Okay, it's 9%. Great. So we started buying single assets with very strong credit behind them. So we bought Rolls-Royce, Procter & Gamble, a couple of other assets, Atos, which was a data storage center. This was back in 2012. This is before. Now it's become very, very fashionable to be an owner of data centers. So we did data centers back then, but we did student housing. Student housing we were very early in institutionalizing student housing. So it really depends on where you are in the cycle, and what does the demographic tell you? What does the market tell you? What does consumer behavior tell you? I mean, that's so important. And as we changed or adapt our strategy, it was really focused on demographics. Generation Y, got a lot of the digitalization started within them, but Generation Z were natives of the digital world, of the iPads and the phones and all that kind of stuff. So that tells us something. Oh, we have to invest in this, because that's which led us to Gatehouse Bank and the challenger model, right? Because a lot of the demographic are only using smartphones, and then my kids are never going to walk into a bank and open an account. They're going to do everything online, and that's what they've done.
So did you guys look at the digital bank angles? Because these guys are very, very aggressive, the likes of Revolut, Monzo, and I think there's so many right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of choose from. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, these are challenger banks. We are considered in that same industry as a challenger bank. We are a digital bank in terms of interface with the client. So we have deposits that we take online. We have different savers accounts, one of which that fits our ESG and ethical model is a woodland savings account. For every account that's open, we plant a tree. And this was over a 3-year period, we've planted more than 60,000 trees. So that tells you, something, the demographic is very interested in the environmental effects and all of that. So it really, and we did that because we wanted to get the average age of our depositors down. The average age of our depositors was in the 60s. When we launched this product, it came down to 38, 40 years old.
Amazing.
Because the younger demographic is much more interested in the environmental impact. So, of course, that was an area that fit exactly the strategic outlook we had. We pivoted to the demographic, and we attracted those client base. And we're very proud of that, that achievement by bringing, one, a a client that is very well aware of ESG, but a client that is even didn't care if it was Sharia compliant or not. They were very interested in the ethical component of banking, and that's how we promote Gatehouse. And we are also an alternative lender in the mortgage business, of course, where it is Sharia compliant. And our model is one of a partnership between us and our borrower, where they are paying us rent, and every year they get more ownership of what payments they've made. So it is a diminishing partnership. So we come in, let's assume a borrower asks for 75% of financing. Probably by the end of the term, they'll own more than 50% of the building, because they paid down principal through rent, and the profits that we make is from the rent only. So we're a partnership model. Therefore, you create a market that is much more aware of the ethical impact that we have. And surprisingly enough, I was just running. So with all of our financing and mortgages we have done, we have had only one default and one client, and it was because of a separation between the husband and the wife, and we worked with them to find a solution. So the difference between a normal mortgage and a Sharia compliant or ethical mortgage is one that we will work with you if you have any issues that you want, because we're at the end of the day partners.
Now, this is a big topic, like this whole Sharia compliant and non-Sharia compliant. Obviously, one aspect that people come at is very expensive. Every pound that they lend, or likes of the Islamic banks, I'm not going to mention any names, including yours, where the charge is like what, £2, £3, like if you were to put in crude terms, where it just seems like it's so expensive. Whereas the convention, they would come back, well, okay, the guys who don't like the whole Islamic or Sharia approved aspect, that's their argument. Oh, it's cheaper the other way, so you might as well do the other one, because it's all terminology. They just work with the terminologies and they make it look halal. Apparently, it's.
I think we've changed that. No. So I think we've changed that over the last 10 years. And that's a great question. I think that perception came from the earlier days. There wasn't a lot of players. The market was small. And for a company or a bank to make up the investment, they had to charge a little bit more. But that is absolutely not true anymore. The pricing is as competitive as a conventional loan. The deposit return rates are even better than the conventional. We are not a day-to-day bank where you go with your ATM cash and all that kind of stuff. No, our deposits are 1 year, 2 year, up to 5 years. So your savings accounts are getting better return, and it's Sharia compliant than the conventional. On the lending side, our cost of financing to our clients is as similar to the conventional banks.
Are your depositors mainly, I mean, I don't want you to give us details, but are they mainly institutional type of people, or are they just everyday people as well?
They're all everyday people. So historically, we did have institutional depositors. But as we try to diversify our balance sheet, and it was a very conscious decision that we've started going into the retail market through building societies and savings, and direct clients would come to our website and open an account. And it's easier, of course, when you're a UK resident. And we're now launching something for the international resident. But it's I think as competitive as the normal market. And if you tell me what the client base is 99% individuals, because again they have the comfort of the Bank of England's guarantee of up to £80,000 on the deposits.
Fantastic. So obviously, ultimately, you're an investor. Gatehouse is a product of your portfolio.
Yeah.
You know that deals with direct to consumer or B2B, however you want to frame it. If someone talking of young people, because we are talking about young people, ESG and everything, if they want to start investing if they want to start into business, because a lot of the time I hear I need money, I need investment, I need this, I need that. What would you say to a 17-year-old? You were a 17-year-old when you were facing a catastrophe.
Yeah.
What would you advise that 17-year-old now living in 2026?
I think
What should they do to generate?
the most important thing is they understand and review. I mean, I'm not saying go to college is the solution, right? But understand as much as you can of what you want to do, and education is a very important part of it. There are so much tools that we have now with AI and the research that you can do as much research as you can, right? That's step one. Step two, I think before embarking on taking very big risk, you should start small or do a collective scheme between you and some friends, so you don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you feel that you're building a business that's you have to say, okay, what am I serving? Who am I serving? Who are my clients? What value am I creating? And I think age is not a deterrent. I mean, I've seen a lot of very successful people that are very young at age, and they continue to build on their success based on a passion that they have for the business and what they deliver as a service. I think a young person that's starting their life need to understand that the first 5 to 10 years of is a learning curve, even when you start businesses, or if you fail. I think failure is actually a credit in the beginning, because when you fail, you learn, and then that gives you more to do for the next idea that you might have and the next creation you might create. I think there's possibilities today. You have to also understand what is the competitive landscape of what you're going to be doing. Whatever business you're in, can I create more value in the service that I'm providing or the goods that I'm providing? And if so, then you try it out, and if you prove your numbers, you will get the investors, you'll get the funding.
We spoke a lot about, the fundamental principles on how the lending is done, but there are so much other things that you guys do aside from the principle itself. I've seen on the wall the charitable activities, taking part in the local communities, the ESG that you've spoken a lot of, few times about. Tell me a little bit more.
So I think the process of owning a home is something very important and special to every person in the world and the family. So the process of purchasing a property goes through a systematic review, right? You're going to have a broker, you're going to have a lender. What we do and what we pride ourselves with is the transparency, and because of the digital nature and the way that somebody can follow the process of their application online. So as soon as you apply online, you could probably get a decision in principle within 10, 15 minutes. Then there's a requirement of whatever documentation from, your salary or addresses, a little bit of background checks. Then the most important thing is that the whole process is shared by all parties, the broker, so everybody knows what's missing at what time. The ethical nature of this is the customer service is very important, because we have nothing to hide. Everything is transparent. This is what needs to be done. It's a checklist. And if you do so, we could acquire your property as soon as possible. One of the things that we pride ourselves with is the average days it takes to close a property from the initiation. Our average is about 3 months, sometimes even less. High street banks are about 6 months to 9 months. So I think that's another challenger bank type of methodology and ESG focus that we have, is we're going to help you to buy your house as soon as we can. Please, monitor your emails and the process. If you do so, we're all on the same page and we can close as soon as possible.
And you guys do so much more, like you plant trees as well to save the planet, which is all great stuff.
I mean, one of our most performing, and we won so many awards for it, was our Woodland Savers account. Anybody that opens an account, we plant a tree. So far we've planted 60,000 trees.
Wow.
In less than 3 years. It's in the UK. The demographic that loves this is the youth. And they're very more interested in a life that has environmental awareness in it. And we're very conscious of that. We do that in everything we do in the business. So we monitor our carbon footprint. And that's a regulatory thing that's coming and an accounting thing. We're already at zero carbon.
Fantastic.
As an institution, by doing the things that support the environment, planting trees and looking at what we used from a resource point of view.
Even I've seen the bins, like, it's all separated. It's so
recyclable. Yeah. Everything is recyclable. Everything is. So it is very important, I think.
I even felt, I don't know if that was a purposeful thing, like I felt like, the building started getting colder as well as we were closing. Is it because they started saving the energy, put the building on the energy?
Yeah. The energy mode goes down depending on times that the people are here or not. All of these are monitored. Even our travel, for example, if when I travel on a plane to come to the meeting, how much carbon we've used, that is counted.
Wow.
Okay. And how we get the zero carbon is by doing things that are good to the nature that crosses it out. So we're already a zero carbon
amazing
footprint.
Fantastic.
Company.
How did this all come about?
It came from personal experience. As I was getting interested in buying a property outside, there were no solutions. It was very, very difficult. You had to.
Oh, you were the customer as well.
In the beginning, I was trying to find.
I didn't grasp that.
See, that's where the passion comes in. It's a solution. So I was lucky enough to have a relationship with HSBC Private Banking that allowed me to do that. But not everybody has that relationship. If you go to a high street bank here, they don't know you. You're not going to get a loan. So I think one of my passions and the legacy that I'd like to keep Gatehouse to have is that we offered solutions that, create the most important fundamental aspect of their life, which is a home, right? Whether you buy it from us or you rent it from us, at least we provided you a beautiful home that you can, start your life with, your family, and grow to that. And I think from a practical experience, that is something that I loved to share with others for the ability for them to go and, because I think that's the most important thing ever, is owning.
That's your first space, only space.
Exactly.
Home.
It's your home.
Yes.
It's your home. And it's great risk because from a risk point of view, it's the lowest risk that you can, as an asset class, invest in. Even, even banks, the regulators in the bank, the risk weighting they put on home mortgages is the least ratio in comparison to lending, a building or something of that nature that takes more.
I guess for you, sir, very much a win-win. You help someone start their life, you're effectively part of their life as well.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a great business case in it.
You feel great when you say, we've already lent 50,000 people to acquire homes.
It's amazing.
And when you say you've already developed and managed, a rented portfolio of 10,000 homes in less than 3 years, right? And so these are 10,000 families that have been affected, right? And you have 50,000 mortgages that people bought homes. That's, you feel great about that. You can go home and you say, okay, I did something that was good.
Amazing. And you were a kind of a frontier as well. Like before many other banks came along, you were there already. Now that we look at the history, like the guy has been there for a long time.
Because it was impossible. If you are a foreigner, you wanted to buy in a different market, it was impossible to do so because you can't even open the bank account.
Yeah.
So, so there was a lot of hurdles that we had to overcome. But we did, and we did so in a way where it's a solution for, the public, and it's one that is, from an ethical point of view, I think the most important ethical point when you have a family, and they have a roof over their heads, and they go to school, and everybody is happier from a life perspective. So bringing in what I have as an example and what I wanted into the business is the passion that I really had. That's how I perceive.
Amazing. And look, you could have done anything, to be honest, with your money. You could have, channeled your energy towards something else. Why did you want to do this? And it's such a manner, like something, it feels like something in you that you don't say, but it's really kind of guiding you to a certain direction.
Sure.
What is it?
Sure. I think the other one very big important is for the community here that want to buy a home in a way that does not affect their faith or affect the principles of their religion. So there weren't a lot of solutions for that market. The Muslim community in the United Kingdom is growing at a very fast pace. Today it's 8% of the population. I think in the next 10 years it's going to be probably 12% of the population.
And not only that, your customer base is not just Muslim.
No.
You've got like everyone taking your products from you. So
because the principles of Islam are very ethical. And that's where we, I think, focused on bringing those principles, applying them in the conventional market in a way that is helpful for everybody. So yes, today, 60 to 70% of our clients are not even Muslim.
And it's like halal meat as well. A lot of non-Muslims, they like the whole halal meat. It's clean, it's fresh, it's done in a very systematic, rigid process.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. And I think you deserve so much credit. Honestly, people, everyone needs to know about you. What you've done for your contribution to the society.
Alhamdulillah.
Now, you are probably a very sophisticated investor. I mean, you probably wouldn't touch a certain type of opportunities because it doesn't meet your threshold. But what if a business needs someone like you? Like, where is that gap? How do you cross that? Bridge that gap?
That's an interesting question. I don't think the sophistication is something that is a deterrent in making any rational decisions. I think one needs to consider a couple of things, as I said earlier. What value are we creating? So in our investments historically, because we are like the general partner and the investors are limited partners, so they are relying on our reputation and our track record. And therefore, for it to be a deal or for us to consider something, it needs to fit or check a lot of boxes. And that's the thematic approach, but also the execution approach, because execution is also very, very important. And I think you gain all that with experiences and networking and relationships that you build over time. But more importantly, with all this is reputation. Reputation is what gets you into a client's investment office, or they open the door for you. The same thing is with the lenders or the industry. They look at you, they look at the track record, they look at your reputation. So in a very regulated environment, in banking, and we're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, and you're regulated by the Prudential Regulatory Authority as a bank. There's a lot of governance that goes in, but more importantly, there's a lot of safeguards that create the risk profile of the investment and what risks that you might face. Whether it's market risk, execution risk, or what it may be. So I don't think the size of the investment is as important as the philosophical nature of it, of all what I've just described collectively. And then, you make that decision based on your research and based on a collective approach with having the smartest people in the room next to you.
So look, Sharia compliant is so I feel, I'm going to talk purely about my experience and the landscape that I'm operating. I feel like we're operating in a parallel world when it comes to Sharia compliance and trying to remain Sharia compliant when it comes to your funding and how you fund your businesses. So living in the West, even ChatGPT says this is haram or this kind of funding is haram. So what are my options? Okay, I've got investors. I can go out and raise capital from investors. Maybe asset-backed kind of funding. But when you're trying to compete in the mainstream landscape where the norm is a certain system, everything, you can pretty much, in this part of the world, you can do whatever you want. You can use any form of appeal you want, sex appeal, whatever appeal, like is okay. How does a business that wants to still maintain Sharia compliance, like for example, I'll talk about one of our businesses. You know, we've reached a certain milestone. We've reached a medium-sized business. Now what? Where do we go? So only one option is obviously raise capital, and the other option is no option. Invoice financing, that still involves some sort of interest. Even the government-backed loan schemes, although it's 70% guaranteed, is still not Sharia compliant. So what do you do? What would you advise someone like me? How do I navigate this situation where my ambition is I want to reach $1 billion valuation one day as well? But how?
I don't think you start with the word Sharia when you go into somebody's door, because everything today, in today's world, 20, 30 years later of experience, everything has become, with the right structure, Sharia compliant. Okay, even private equity funds, early investors. So there's different tools that you can use at that time. But you mentioned you've reached a certain point, and what do I do now? How do I grow to $1 billion? Or is this business, can it be $1 billion or not? You ask a question. Or is it time for me to sell the business to somebody that's bigger, and and start something new? Because sometimes there's a limit of what the value that you can create, unless you have unlimited resources. No one has unlimited resources. Not us, not banks. Regulators don't allow that. So even at one time or another, it's great that you have a bank part of the portfolio, because that could, but you can't mix those businesses. The regulators don't allow that. It's very, very difficult, right? You have to be very, from a thematic point of view, this is what we do, this is what we lend, and there's a conflict of interest if you lend another entity, right?
Yeah.
So that's all, comes out very clearly. So I think, for businesses that have reached a certain structure, they either bring in people that have, as advisors, for example, on the board or strategy, or you create a committee that have done this before and taken businesses to another level. You can explore exit options by, or you can explore joint ventures with another business that is similar to yours, and then you get the economies of scale and you get your cost burden down, and then you create your $1 billion company. But you don't have to own it all.
No.
You can be a percentage of it.
Yes, absolutely.
So there are different, I'm just thinking out loud right now, but there are different ways that you can find solutions. There's a lot of businesses that, grow by acquisition. Even the big, the biggest companies in the world, that's what they do. They grow by acquisition. They can't keep growing the way they are unless they acquire. So, your business could be attractive for somebody else that wants to grow, and they buy you all out, and then you make a decision. Or you say, okay, let's both value our businesses. Let's join forces. Let's bring our costs down, and let's put this target of being $1 billion company.
Wow. Impressive. So let's say I'm 40 right now. Let's use me as an example. What do I need? What should I think about? How should I think to change my course from being very much an operator to more of an allocator? Because it's very difficult when you're kind of paralyzed when you know everything in a business. You automatically get dragged in. You automatically go into problem solving. You itch to solve the problem because you can see it's fixable.
Yeah.
But how do you move away?
So I think that's when you hire experts and advisors at a certain time, and you allow yourself to, get advice from people that have done this before. And if you want to move away from the day-to-day issues. You hire a very good chief operating officer, you know, and somebody that has done this, and you delegate a lot of what you know has been taking your time, so you can focus on other things. So that's a big hurdle, or sometimes a trap that people get into, is I'm using all my time fixing problems and issues like that, and it's operational. I know it can be solved, but it's only me that can solve it. Nothing is about only me.
Yeah.
There's
Everything can be solved.
everybody can be solved, and everybody can be replaced, and everybody has the ability to find a succession model for your business. So I think when you say I'm an SME, you have to start looking about the talent that you have around you, the succession planning, and I think that's when you say, okay, I want to move more on the strategic side, and I'm going to have somebody else run the business on a day-to-day side. So these are different tools that you can look at and approach from the...
So you wouldn't take that as a challenge, this whole limitations or restrictions on availability of financial products that are easily available by somebody else who is operating in a different way. So all of our businesses, we've never taken a bank loan. We've never even funded a shipment from China through some sort of a credit facility. It was always from our initial £1,000 that we've invested, and it kept on growing and growing. So I think we're at that inflection point where we have to decide, okay, where do we go next? And right, like you said, exit potentially is an option, or maybe half exit, or partnering up with somebody else. But you don't accept that as an excuse or a reason where that can be a challenge, like
every challenge,
unavailability of certain products.
I think every challenge needs to be looked at from the point of view of what you're trying to achieve at the end of the day. So because you said, I want my business to grow, so you already have something, that's tangible. So it's not just an idea. No, you have a number. So now you work back. How do I get there, right? How you get there could be, again, by thinking outside of the box. Sometimes we get so stuck together in our issues that we don't look outside of the box. I love looking outside of the box. I think sometimes crises create opportunities. And that's generally, even from an investment point of view, a crisis. Oh, there's an opportunity. If somebody's in trouble, well, that's an opportunity. So I think what you do is you attract the right advisors, independence. That's why they call them independent directors. They might be a little bit expensive, in terms of, but they're going to add a lot of value because of their experience, because you look at the way you recruit for that position as a consultant and advisor is one that's going to show you a lot. And you can ask them in the interview process, right? And I've done this with our CEO here. When we were interviewing.
You recruited him?
Yeah.
I
recruited. But when we were interviewing a lot, we gave him, we signed an NDA. We gave him all our issues. This is what we are. Now give us a plan. Now, he was working at another bank at that time, right? And then you come and you study their approach. They put in the effort and, putting a presentation together. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to get there. And you've just done it for free before hiring them, if you want to, right? Because
luckily you hired the CEO.
No, but that's what I mean. I mean, you could attract a consultant right now. Tell them, look, I'm looking to hire a director, independent director in my company, to advise me and everything. I've seen your resume. You're impressive. Would you be interested in the role? Maybe. Okay. This is the issues that I have. What would you go about and do?
To present the problem to them, let them come up with it.
And then you see which one makes the most sense. It fits your strategic initiatives and goals. And then, then you come together and you put that plan together, and then you put milestones. And then you could also, during that time, if they don't hit those milestones, you could say, thank you very much. I'll hire somebody else, or, they get you to your promised land by selling the business, or whatever it may be. So I think bringing in expertise is important, especially people that have been through, especially somebody that's in the same industry, that has done it before. They're available. And there's so much headhunters and recruitment firms out there. You put exactly what you want and they'll send you the CVs, you start reviewing them, and then you start interviewing. Once you get to the smaller pool, you don't want to tell everybody your problems. Once you bring them down to, let's say, 4 or 5, then you sign an NDA agreement, and then you tell them, show them everything, and tell them this is where I'm facing problems. How would I go about it and solve?
Interesting. I learned a lot from that part of the conversation. So I find myself, and this is I feel like I'm taking free counseling from you. I hope that's okay. And this is a personal conflict that I have within me. In our religion, we're taught, okay, we should be humble, we should be this, we shouldn't have, okay, takabbur, I understand, we shouldn't have pride, we shouldn't have, but somehow people also translate that into not having money somehow. Like being not super wealthy is somehow in at least for my day-to-day interaction, it's like you can be successful, but like when you get to a certain level, it's like they will call you like you become too hungry, or you're doing too much now. What's your view, and how would you kind of address that? Because I think that's a structural problem in our society where I think we should all be wealthy. Then we can build more mosques. We can give more charity. We can give more zakat. There's so much to do. There's so much to solve within our world.
Yeah, I think when you started the question, you brought in the faith, and from the faith perspective, we all understand is rizq is from Allah. Whatever we get, and whatever successes, whatever failures, whatever things, it's all written. The rizq from Allah. If you give in to that, that's the first and most fundamental thing, is giving in to the greater, rizq. You have to believe in that word.
That you are not in control of what's coming to you.
What's coming to you. There's something, much more bigger and powerful than any of us. Okay, so that's point number 1. Number 2, I think when you said, okay, well, I want to do more in this and charity, I think that's great, because in the Quran, in the Sunnah, it talks about the more you give, the more you will get. Okay, so a lot of the most successful people out there in the world that I have seen are people that have given back and given, and Allah gives them more and opens wider doors from that perspective. So, to answer your question, when you said, oh, but I need to show some kind of
humility, I don't have, or you don't, like, you cannot, I don't know how to frame it. It's like, it's looked down upon, the wanting to do more.
I think, it comes to the energy. Number 1, you have great energy, mashallah, and you're an entrepreneur and you want to start things, right? And you said, I want to build a mosque. خلاص, I'm going to build a mosque. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to go and raise awareness. This is how I'm going to raise the money that is needed for it. And there's a lot of charitable, groups out there. You have zakat every year, 2.5%. Everything is known. It's a simple equation. And you build, I think most importantly, is the confidence and reputation that you have built over the career. Then the investors will come. I recall a story just recently where somebody was raising money for a family that lost the caregiver, the father in Gaza, and it was a young girl, and her mother, and it was just a story that somebody knew, and they sent an email. This is the story, and they raised the money for their relocation, for their education, and they paid 2 years of rent in Egypt, and the medical bills, and it was all with one email that described the situation. There's a lot of people that want to give, but they want to see the opportunity
Yeah.
that they want to get.
Now, what if we were to, I suppose my question is, we need more people with ability to give. But then some people will say, well, no, you should be more focused on ibadah and, more spiritual. Don't worry about money. This is for like, this dunya is temporary. Like, you shouldn't focus too much in dunya. But I feel like, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. So dunya, we must take care of first. But I feel like we're constantly being bombarded. Don't have, be poor. Almost feel like be poor.
Yeah, but from a context of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was a business person. Abu Bakr was one of radiallahu anhu was one of the most richest people. Umar, all of these, they were business people. So in context, if they tell you the Islam, there was trade, there was business. Mecca was built on trade and business. And they've helped create the religion by supporting it with their money. So they were, if they weren't business people and if they weren't successful, this religion could maybe have not come up, because Allah gave support to the Prophet with his very wealthy friends that were business people.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're all business people.
100%. And it circles back to what you were saying, team. Because Prophet ﷺ went for the top tier, top class of the society.
Team. They were the team.
He built the team and he went for the best.
Yes. And they were all very wealthy. They were successful. They were known and they had good reputation. Amr ibn al-As, the richest of riches at that time. He was trading and the Umayyads were trading with Syria before Islam. They were big business from Damascus. They would bring fabrics and they would sell spices, and they were all business people.
No, absolutely. I think I'm of the same view. Like, we should all be accumulating more wealth, not less wealth.
No, and wealth is not haram.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why would it be haram? Because there's so much upsides to creation of wealth. You can give jobs to people.
Exactly.
And generally, businesses that are owned by Muslims, the good Muslims, they have a lot better standards, like in terms of their behavior towards employees, staff, and environment generally.
Yeah.
Now, I want to lighten it up a bit. You live in many different continents. You travel back and forth. Today you're in London. I think you messaged me on Sunday or something. You say, I'm still in USA. Where are you going to go next? And how does this schedule work? Who makes the schedule? Do you make it, or do you or does someone else tell you need to be there?
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of that until about 2 to 3 years ago, because our investments were global. There was a time that I was also the chief executive of the bank, so I was traveling a lot to London and staying in London at a period of time. I would also make sure that any investments we had at that time, I would see them, I would meet the people, because again, it's all about the people, it's all about the relationship, and it's all about, the trust that you build. That was a different period of time. 3 years ago, my wife was given the opportunity to be the ambassador of Kuwait in the United States.
Amazing.
So I had to leave my day-to-day business back in Kuwait, as a investment CEO of a company that was public, for her job. And I had moved with her to the United States, of course, support her endeavors and, the value that I think she brings to the country and representing Kuwait. So I thought that was more important than what I was doing. I still continue to do some jobs. One of them is the Gatehouse Bank job. So yes, I was in Washington, D.C. When we talked. I'm here for this week, and then I'm back to the U.S. Business-wise, I probably am traveling much less than I used to. There were times that I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I don't know what city I was in, and that was a problem. Really, I mean, you'd wake up.
You were just living with dates, not days. Days. What day is it today?
What country am I in? It's like I'm in Paris. We had assets in France. So it really depends on. And then, of course, the clients, you travel to when they need to, especially if they were, large institutions, they want to meet, they want to meet the team. So there was a lot of client meetings and travel to that, whether it was regional in the GCC or, in the US. And the US, is huge, right? So we had, at one time or another, more than 900 homes in Houston, for example. We had industrial sites more, all over the United States. So at least, when you're making significant investments of, 100 million, you should go and travel and see and meet people. So that was the time that
have a feel, have a gut feel.
Yeah. Over the years, then you start, once you trust people, you do more business and you build a track record, then you have, more confidence. The pandemic changed a lot where, travel was all stopped and everything was done via video conference. So we've learned and adapted to that. We still use that here today. Even in the bank, we have a hybrid work policy and people love it. We think it's great. They don't have to come to the office every day. They can work from home 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and they can come to the office the other days. So I think, the technological advancements that have happened with after the pandemic, we really did leap as a business or, a society and life is people were used to now, doing things on video and managing through that process. So I get on a lot of video calls now, travel a little bit less. But of course, if need be, there is travel sometimes. Our advisors and consultants are based in New York and Chicago. So, once a year I'd meet with them still. And they become your friends, and when you go and you meet there, it's more strategic rather than, oh, what did you do? How did you do this? No, it's more strategic.
Setting the directions.
Yeah.
Is there an element of time compression in your life, like where you want more done in a short period of time? Like, do you apply certain pressures on the team so they can move quickly and faster and achieve more things?
Always. Every business, everybody would have to do this, especially when you're a chair of a bank and strategy and putting things together. And you're in committees, for example, different committees, there's policies and procedures, and you need to get things by a certain deadline. So yeah, you always don't need to push on, for example, closing a deal. There was a deal that we've been working on, a large deal with a US private equity firm that we wanted to close in 2025. And there was so much work that was going in that it became impossible to close by year end because we wanted to, get that profitability in our books. So it was unfortunate that it didn't close in 2025. But it did close in February of 2026, right? So at that time, I was like, let's get it done, gotta get it done, right? But that's, and even during the last hours of a deal before it closes, you're still pushing, especially as the primary decision team and maker, you're always saying, okay, we have a deadline, we need to get there, and that's how you.
What gives you anxiety? Right now, where you are right now in your life, it feels like, a ton of money, unlimited resources, wake up, have a nice coffee, looking at the view.
See, that's perception. See, again, that's a perception.
That's what I'm asking. What's the anxiety? What are
every day? No, every day there's pressures and anxiety. There's always my kids now have all, are in college and university and they live in different places in the world. So, feeling and being mindful of them living in, for example, New York or Los Angeles alone is something that keeps me awake. Are you okay? Everything's okay?
Wow.
So family that's, alhamdulillah, and the health and, that's the most important thing that you have is family. I'm concerned sometimes, of course, with my wife's job because how stressful and important that is. We just had a
Now more so than ever before.
yeah, we had the regional issues that had just happened, more so than ever. I mean, that causes us concern, and because again, when you're a leader or when you're at top of a position, you are ultimately responsible. So, like I am responsible in the house with my family, and the same applies to the job, the clients. And, we as when you're a director on a bank, especially in the UK, a very highly regulated
You got
market, you got, you and especially, I mean, it's a really big thing. Directors are fully responsible and everything. So there's so much documents that come before a board, the time that it takes for you to review, because when you sign your name after the minutes, you're responsible for the decisions that the bank have made. So of course, every decision comes with a little bit of anxiety.
And the same be applied in a non-bank environment, like a retail environment where you appoint directors and they are responsible for their decisions and actions.
Yeah. So
or should it be done?
Again, I've never run a retail business, but I also see, and this is even from friends and family members, that they have a lot of stresses too. They have the successful businesses, they do margin businesses and all that, but it's very very stressful, because as you said, bank line is due. There's a delay in shipment. We have issues getting our products. Clients are very sensitive in terms of not making a decision until the product is right in front of them. So that causes them stress as well. And they have very successful businesses. And I would say, when I look at it, I say, oh, I'd love to take your business. Like, no, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Everyone's got their own unique challenges.
Yes.
That's and one thing that you've mentioned, being a responsible person, you can delay something, but ultimately it has to be done.
Yes.
It's got to get done.
Yeah.
So there is no running away. There is no no, I'll take a day off and that day is gone and that's it. That the whole chapter is gone as
Absolutely.
well. No, it's waiting for you around the corner. Well, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? You wake up, go gym or something, or walk, or what does your daily structure look like?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I do, the first hour of the day, I really need to keep to myself by reviewing whatever emails that I've got the night before, whatever it may be, reply, have my cup of coffee, manage that. I try to take a walk every day in the morning, if it's 15, 20, 30 minutes, just to clear, so without any devices or distraction or any of that. Then you probably prepare for if you have a conference call that's due or a meeting or whatever it may be. There's a lot of reading that goes into preparation, and then I think there's a time where you have to also understand, as you gain more responsibilities, that you also have to have a little bit of off time. And I think for me, that was, going fishing, for example. I love, as a hobby, if you can, or being
Takes a lot of patience as
takes a
well.
lot of patience. Yeah, it learns you to teach patience.
Teaches you patience.
But you need to do the things that you really love. I love the sea, so being close to the sea, just having that environment close to you, that's like a holiday. That's like where you can take a deep breath and understand. And then I think, you said it earlier, how much do we continue? When do we stop? So, there's a time that you reflect. I'm probably I'm 53 almost now. I'm 52.
Yeah, I've calculated that before I came. I didn't want to attack your age, but you've done it for us.
So it's so after 30 years of doing this, you tend to be more on the using your life experiences and expertise, and that's how you give back. I love, for example, teaching a young entrepreneur that's starting a business and wants some advice or whatever.
You shouldn't have said that. I'm gonna bang on your doors every day.
No, I love doing that. That's something that I really
amazing.
I like to do. Even when I talk to, for example, my son, who's now in the private equity world, worked in New York, now is in LA. And I see the perspective that he comes from. I'm learning. So again, today, there's so much that we need to appreciate with AI and what's happening and the way it's going to affect every single part of our lives. Every business is going to be affected by it. And how do you apply it and how fast it's moving. So every day you do a little bit more research because everybody's trying to sell you a software.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's too many softwares out there.
But then you look at two things. You look at functionality. Today, I think what AI is providing, and that's what I look for, is to be as as resourceful and productive as possible with what you have, and that's where I think AI is bridging the gaps. Things that used to take days or a lot of time with legal counsel could be done in 30 seconds, in a minute right now by reviewing a contract. We didn't have these before. We used to read all the contracts and everything. So for example, that's an AI function that supports a more let's say creative way of finding solutions, of building a business, of attracting clients. So that's something that I think the next generation will take to another level. We're at the beginning of this right now.
AI it helps you so much, but at the same time, it confuses people so much as well. Like, it feels like there's so much clarity, but there's so much unclarity at the same time.
That's where you have to learn, I think, the fact that, AI is not a solution 100%. There has to be some kind of human conviction of something that you've read or that it's not, and you have to believe that it's not always right. Not everything they say. You could double
challenge it. You have to
challenge it, exactly. But it is much more resourceful. Now, how do you apply it? For example, there's ways that, just in our journey, for example, customer service. If somebody calls up, you could have the same type of questions. You know that this problem, AI can solve it in a much quicker way than it used to be by having a individual or a case officer or something of that nature. So data is the most important area. And from data, you learn how to make decisions, whether it's problem solving or creating new products.
100%. Now, before we end, let's say I'm 40 now, 2026. So 2036, I will hopefully, if I live long enough, I'll be 50. Can you set me some KPIs? Set me some KPIs.
So there's no KPIs. I think at the end of the day, the journey is one that Allah has already given that path. It's already written, but it's how do you go about in using the energy that you have into fulfilling what you want. Look, it's not about money. Life is 100%, and happiness does not come from money. Understand that, because sometimes money creates more problems. Because you could use money. Oh, I'm going to buy a house here. I'm going to buy a car there or rent car, and these are new issues that are coming up that you don't realize, right?
And then you have to have more security, more this, more that,
this and that. Yeah. So it's really you need to find the right balance, and that balance comes from what makes you understand, your life. One, what you value. Two, what are you creating? So, what keeps me excited in stuff that we do at Gatehouse is that we're providing a solution, whether it's a mortgage or whether it's a rental platform with our BTR homes that we created and built. It's very fulfilling when you say, oh, we built 5,000 homes in the last 3 years, and you gave 5,000 families this great
amazing.
That keeps you happy. That's great. You've solved a thing that is needed by everybody. the other side, for example, when you have an international buyer, so we provide the mortgages to an international buyer that wants to buy an apartment because instead of paying rent for their kids that go to university, and then they make it as a rental income property, you provide them a solution. So instead of them just paying rent without getting anything behind it, they got something of value. So that's where that what makes me excited. It's a win-win situation for everybody. And I think any business, any successful business will need to address these things. One is make something that is win-win, create something that you feel good and passionate about in delivery. And that's something that you say, okay, now I'm at a point where I want to make people's lives better. How can I do that? Where can I impact most? And I think, I've never worked in government, and it's very hard for me to work in government, although I've been approached to take some important government jobs. But I know myself, I'm not a bureaucratic type of person in terms of the way I think. On the other hand, serving is important, and serving the country when they call you is important. So, when my wife took that job and supporting her and being there, that's a way where I feel I'm serving my country in a different manner.
Amazing.
And I think that's
amazing. So if we were talking in 10 years' time, let's say, how when friends catch up, hey, what you been up to? What are you doing nowadays? Like, obviously, like we're on Instagram. I know you see my posts time to time, and sometimes I feel embarrassed with the stuff that I share sometimes, but I just be me. What would you advise me then in that case, if no KPI? So my agenda is time compression. I want to, if I want to live for 10 years, I want to live twice within that 10 years. So do more, be more productive. And I think that reframes the whole way I look at things, and team building, and all the systems come into place, which I was really not thinking about before. So give me some advice.
One of the most self-fulfilling things, again, is something that you were involved in and that still continues after you sold it or you left it or whatever it may be. It's very fulfilling to you that you had a hand in creating this solution, product, investment, whatever it may be. I think, one, you have to consider what are those goals in your internal messaging. What do I want to leave behind? What's my legacy that I want to leave behind? Doing too many things sometimes is a problem too. Because then you're not focused.
100%.
Right? And then you need to understand, where am I giving my time? It's taking so much time. I'm getting stressed. I'm being, I don't have time with my family. I don't have enough time for travel or, so then that's the balance. That's when you say, is this something that is helping me or deterring me? And I think that's like self-conscious.
So you have to decide. You have to decide for yourself what you want.
And then again, I think what I've learned, especially when I was in my 40s, is really learn how to delegate authority to people that you trust, because you cannot continue to do everything.
It just drains you.
It drains you
before you even start your day.
Absolutely. So I think that's something very important. Delegation, hiring the right caliber, having the right team. Then make it a fun job rather than it being a stressful job. Because if it's not fun, you're not going to give 100%.
100%.
And then you have to also minimize your risks or minimize the time that this problem is created. So you have to, that's the 1 hour that you take in the morning, that you clear your head, no phones, no nothing, and start thinking about issues. And then how much time is this taking from me? How much effort is this taking from me? What am I getting in return? It could be a lot, but you're getting a lot of self-fulfillment from it. On the other hand, it could be so much fun and so much better. You'll do so much better because you're so passionate about it. So, about what you're trying to do. And that's all the great ones. That's how they are. Whether it's Steve Jobs, Musk, they don't care.
Branson is all about fun. Like, make it fun.
Make it fun. It's about being making and loving what you do. And you can't put your journey that you've taken into somebody else. You can't.
100%. I used to do that so much before.
No, you can't do
I
that.
want to be like this. If he can do it, so I can do it.
Yeah.
But then I realized, but his path is so different. His life is everyone's life is so different.
Yeah.
We came alone, we're going to go alone. So why am I going to try and, force myself to be someone that I'm not?
It's very, very difficult that you try to imitate somebody's journey. There's different factors at different times. That's what I was telling you. A deal that worked in 2002 would not work in 2006 or whatever it may be. There's so many factors, micro factors, cycle, where people are from a mindset. What do they want? What can they achieve? What can they not achieve? And I think once we understand these characteristics, then we can focus in the right way. And that's where you put your passion. That's where you say, okay, I'm really passionate about getting this done.
Amazing. Is there anything that we should have spoken about, but we didn't?
I think you spoke great. I mean, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help anytime.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Fahed Boodai, thank you so much. Honestly, I was so excited. Normally, when you're doing podcasts, it becomes kind of a routine. But with you, I was just getting ready from like 2 weeks before, to do this interview because it means so much to me. Honestly, it does. And you know what? I have to give credit to Alicia Bulla, for the event that she organized or with Arabian Business Awards back in 2020 or 21. Or before lockdown, I don't know when it was.
Yeah, it was before. We met there, yes.
And that's where I came across yourself, and I was like, wow, this man, where do I find him? So I kind of snooped around internet, and then I eventually traced you and then connected with you, and I'm ever so grateful to be in the presence of your network.
Alhamdulillah, it was such an honor to be.
Thank you so much.
And I'm humbled by the kind words that you said. One of the things that keeps me happy right now is doing this, is giving back.
Amazing.
And anytime, whether you're listeners, podcast viewers, whatever it may be, you need a question, you need help, please reach out. You know where to find us. This is Gatehouse Bank.
Fantastic.
And we're here to help.
And I hope Gatehouse Bank, I know it's a very structured bank, and I hope it does more in the future to facilitate the younger generation, because there is a big predicament. And I think with your network, and if I am kind of pitching for the audience, the guys who want to buy the house, because I'm on the kind of ground, I can sense, I can hear. And I think one of the things is it's really hard to get into that barrier. I don't know what it is with you, 25% or 20%, but for a lot of people, obviously I understand you have your risk strategy and, risk mitigation plans. But I think on the other hand, there are a lot of people who want to get onto the ladder, but it's either this or nothing.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys will factor in at some point.
Thank you. No, so I just want to get that misinformation just to clear to the market what it is. Some things are regulatory in terms of criteria. Underwriting a client and their risk profile is something that is very mathematical based on their income, and how much they make in terms of a salary and how much you can lend them. That's a regulatory type of business. I think we tend to be mindful of the criteria and try to help the youth as much as we can. That's why I think as the demographic change is, instead of them getting on the ladder of ownership, and why don't we create something that is very good and as a rental
partnership,
and a rental property. So the solutions are there, but you need to create value. So we don't do a lot of the high Mayfair type of loans. No. We do the basic 300,000, 400,000 pound home. And if you don't have, the 40,000 that you need to put up front, we could do a partnership model where you can rent the house, and then over the years, as you pay down, you could get on the ladder by owning equity through that.
Okay, fantastic. And I would encourage everyone to look at the Gatehouse Bank website for further information. Thank you once again, Mr.
Thank you.
Boodai, for your
Thank
time.
you.
And I'm sure our viewers and listeners will enjoy this episode so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, shukran. Thank you. Yeah.